Hey, gorgeous souls, and welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast, which has been on a very, very, very long hiatus of about 4 years. So it's been a while since I made a podcast, but here we are. Some things, I guess, just aren't finished even when you think they are. So I wanted to make this first episode back, which is actually episode 29. I decided to keep going with the podcast. I had a lot of ideas for changing its name, for starting again, doing a totally different kind of podcast, but the more I tuned into it, the more I thought, actually, there's not really anything wrong with New Age Hipster Radio. It was a lot of fun. And I loved sharing my thoughts and stuff that had been coming up for me. And I loved chatting with my friends and other amazing people in the community. And so in the end, I decided not to change it. So 4 years later, here we are with the same old podcast. Brand new me, same old podcast. I don't know if it's brand new me, but it's the same old podcast. I have so much to share with you. I have so many things planned. I already feel like my mind is racing like all over the place, trying to think of all of the things that I want to talk about and want to share with you. I wanted this first episode to be a kind of introduction / reintroduction and just kind of tell you a little bit about what I've been doing for the last 4 years, where I've been. I know a lot of people have noticed I've started posting on YouTube again. I am going to put these podcast episodes on YouTube. This is something I didn't do before, but I'm going to attempt to do it this time, even though it feels very strange just sitting talking at the camera. Which is part of why I stopped doing YouTube in the first place, because it just felt weird to me. It's kind of not so bad when I've got cards and I'm doing readings or whatever, but just sitting talking out of camera is a little bit weird for me. I think it's probably weird for everybody, but some people seem to kind of be better at it. I don't know. I always like doing the podcast with just no makeup, no hair done. I could just sit in a little kind of ball and just share my thoughts and feelings. But apparently I was guided to do it this way. So that's what we're going to do. So you can listen to this as a podcast in all the podcast places, or you can watch it on YouTube, basically. So this is supposed to be an reintroductory episode. I didn't make any notes, and I'm thinking now, as I'm saying this, that maybe I should have made some notes just to remind me of what I'm here to talk about. In case you couldn't already tell, I like to have a little bit of a ramble sometimes. I'm not necessarily the most logical kind of minded person. I'm going to write some notes and only talk about these things. I tend to like to go with the flow sometimes in some areas of life. In these conversations, they've always been very much go with the flow on the podcast, and I think that has worked. So I'm going to keep doing it and see if it still works. So here we are. Okay, so who am I? Who is this rambling woman that you're listening to or watching on YouTube? So I'm Vix, and my full name that you may have seen in places is Victoria Maxwell. A lot has happened since our last podcast episode. I've published a few books and decks, which is super, super exciting. And I might do an episode on that process. I don't know. I have so many things that I want to talk about and want to share with you. I would really love to know from you, though, like, what do you want me to talk about? If there are things that, questions that you have about spirituality or writing or, anything that you think that I might have some advice on, please ask. Please just post in the comments. This podcast is not really planned, in case you couldn't tell. It's not really. I have some people lined up who I'm going to be speaking with, which I'm really excited about, and I have a few ideas of a couple of episodes that I want to create, but I'm here for you. Like, I don't want this podcast to be like, oh, it's just me sharing things that I want to say. I want this to be a conversation. I want this to be useful. I want this to be of service to you. So hit me with your questions. What do you want me to ramble on? What do you want me to find an expert on that we can chat about together? Let me know. So, where was I? Who am I? Okay. So the cool things that have happened, the books that I've written that you may have heard of, one of them is called Witch Please, Empowerment and Enlightenment for the Modern Mystic. And that was published with HarperCollins in 2020. And I want to talk a little bit about 2020, not so much that it brings up all of your own personal trauma around 2020, but I think that might come into into this episode at some point, because that was a big one for me, as I know it was a big one for everyone. So that book came out in 2020, which meant that I never actually got to see it on a shelf until about 6 months later, when I was actually no longer in the country. So that's a little story I want to tell you about soon. But yeah, that was really exciting. And amazingly, I don't know if I should say amazingly, because it makes it sound like I didn't believe in myself, but that book's been really, really successful. It's still on the shelves in Waterstones in the UK. I bump into it all the time when I'm out and about here in Australia in different witchy shops. I've seen it just a couple of weeks ago. I was in Daylesford, which is one of my local witchy shops, and it was in the front window, and I was so excited to see it there. It was really very, very cool to walk past. There's something about walking past a shop window and seeing your book in the window that's just, I don't know if you can describe it until you've experienced it for yourself, but it's something that I've been manifesting for a really long time. So years and years ago, when I was kind of first started my business, and I was writing fiction as well, and I kept walking past Waterstones and kind of, so I would stand there like such a weirdo. I'd stand outside Waterstones. And Waterstones, if you're not from the UK, you might not know what Waterstones is. It's like the biggest bookshop in the UK. And it's a chain, so there's lots of, like, every town has a Waterstones. So I would stand there outside my Waterstones, and I'd just look at all of the books in the window, and I just visualize my book and my name. And sometimes I visualize fiction, sometimes I visualize something else, but it was just like my book in the window. So I haven't actually seen my book in the window of Waterstones, but I have seen it in windows of other shops, which has been very, very magical. Anyway, that book has been, it's been like a little runaway success. It's kind of just been there doing its own thing. It's been doing really well on Amazon. Last time I looked on Amazon a few weeks ago, it was like number 3 most gifted witchy books. I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. And it is, it is a really pretty book. It looks really pretty on your shelf. It's pink, which a lot of people don't always associate with witchy books, but I think there is definitely a group of people out there like myself who are witchy, but kind of like pink, we're like the pink witches. So yeah, anyway, that was a very long ramble on Witch Please. I've also, since then, I've authored and brought out the Angels Among Us Oracle, the Goddesses Among Us Oracle, both published with Rockpool. And I have my next book with HarperCollins coming out this week. Actually, as of recording this, I probably won't put this up for another month or so, so it'll probably be out now. It's called Manifest Your Dreams, and it's all about manifesting. I'm going to make a podcast episode about that book. There's a few things in the book that I want to have a bit of a ramble on, so stay tuned for that one. And I also have another book coming out later this year, which I'm not sure if I'm supposed to actually talk about that yet. I don't know. My publisher hasn't said I can't, but anyway, there's another book coming out later this year, and I also have another Oracle deck coming out next year. So that's been amazing. It's been really, really amazing, and I feel so I feel so many feelings about all of that. But it's pretty cool because, last time we were doing the podcast, I was thinking about publishing. I had actually when we finished the podcast, the last episode was in 2019. And at that point I had actually published, I think I'd published my first 2 fiction books. I'd self-published those, and the third one came out in 2021. So the whole series is complete. It's called, if you're interested in that, it's called the Santolsa Saga, and it's essentially pretty witchy, pretty wacky, but I think it's amazing. It's like, I love it. Sometimes you create something and you're just like, I love this, and other times you create stuff and you're like, I don't know about this. But anyway, it's called the Santolsa Saga. It's a young adult fiction romance, and it's time travel. So the first book is called Class of 1983, and it's about a girl who goes back in time to, guess when? 1983. She meets a cute guy there. She has some adventures. And the whole thing really is about, these questions around what is destiny? Can we really create our own destiny? Is it written in the stars, or is it something that we get to create ourselves? So some big questions that, it took me 3 books to kind of work through, but there's lots of witchy stuff in there. So yeah, check that out if that is something that, if you're interested in young adults fiction, that might be something that you want to find out more about. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I'm going to go back a little bit and let you know how I ended up here in Australia, because last time we were doing the podcast, I was in the UK. I was living in the UK. My life was very much there. I'd been in the UK for 10 years. So, you can get pretty grounded in a place for 10 years when you've been there for 10 years. So I was actually, I didn't even know that I was married last time I was doing the podcast. I got married in Vegas, and that was amazing. I'd always kind of liked the idea of having a really kitschy wedding where it was just, eloping always sounded good to me. I loved that idea. So we eloped, we went to Vegas, and yeah, it was amazing. It was really, really amazing. We did that in 2019. So we were very, very lucky that we did, because of course after that, traveling became more difficult. So in 2020, a couple of cool things happened for me that year while I was navigating everything everybody else was navigating. One of those things was that I started my Kundalini yoga teacher training. And part of the reason I did that was when, all the stuff that happened in 2020 happened, I was using and working with a lot of Kundalini yoga practices and really finding myself much more able to deal with everything, than I probably would have previously without those practices. And I actually been doing Kundalini yoga since 2016, I think, was when I first came across it. is it 2016, 2015? Might have even been, yeah, 2000, let's say it was 2016, it was about then. There's like this whole period of time between like, I don't know, 2013 and 2018. That's like, I can't really specifically remember what happened in all of those years. Anyway, my first Kundalini yoga class was with Guru Jagat, which was absolutely amazing. That was in Obanyan, and I went there to do tarot readings. I was invited there for a couple of weeks over the summer to read tarot, which was like amazing. I got to go to this, it wasn't a tropical paradise because it was in Croatia, but it was pretty beautiful there. And yeah, Guru Jagat was there, and I got to experience Kundalini yoga for the first time, and I hated it, absolutely hated it. I was just like, why would anybody want to do this? There was a move that we did, a posture that we did, a kriya that we did, where you had your arms up in the air and you just had to like hold your arms in the air and you were breathing. I think it was actually what's called the ego eradicator, and you put your arms up in the air like this. You can't see me if you're listening on the podcast, but basically you stick your arms in the air and you breathe. You do like a breath of fire breath, which is like a fast kind of breath. And I started doing that, and I was doing it for like, I think it was only, we were supposed to do it for 3 minutes, and I did it for about, I think 50, I don't know, probably 20 seconds. And I was like, why are we doing this? What is this? I was just not, I just couldn't understand why anybody would want to do this, or why would you want to hold your arms in the air and breathe like this for any length of time. So I actually, and I'm not proud of this, but I did actually walk out of that class before the end because I couldn't handle it, which was totally fine because that's just where I was at the time. And, you know, it was only later on that I kind of, you know, the seed had been planted, even though I wasn't that interested in watering it at all. And, you know, but there was something about Guru Jagat that intrigued me, and I did end up starting to follow her on socials, and then found some of her videos on YouTube, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll see what this is about. Maybe I'll try this again, you know. And I think that happens on the spiritual path. We find these things that at the time, maybe we were a little bit interested in them, maybe we're kind of like, oh, yeah, maybe. And then we come back to it later and it's like, wow, okay. Didn't quite get it the first time, but now it's like, you know, this is actually something, you know, this is pretty interesting. So I started working with just some videos on YouTube, really was how it began. And then started taking more and more online classes, and got to a point where I was doing a lot of practices on my own as well, and just really feeling like, you know, and all that stuff was happening in 2020, I felt like, you know, these practices are really good. Like, this is really helping me a lot. And I wanted to go deeper, and I wanted to learn more. And I didn't really have the intention at that time that I wanted to be a teacher. I just wanted to learn more about the practices and understand them better. And, you know, part of that also was, you know, at that time there's still a lot of conversations about cultural appropriation. I would love to do a podcast episode on that, maybe have some voices, invite some people on to have some of those conversations, because I think they're really, really important. But part of it for me was, you know, this question around, is it really even okay for me to do these practices? For those of you who don't know me and aren't watching this on the video, I am a white woman. I was born in Australia, but my ancestry is British, and I've obviously spent a lot of time in the UK as well. So Kundalini yoga is like, it's not my heritage. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up for me around that. I obviously wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to understand more. So I signed up for Kundalini yoga teacher training. And yeah, that was the beginning of my teacher training journey, which was pretty epic. However, a few months after that, I got a call from my mum saying that she had cancer, and I decided to go back home. I say decided, it's kind of like when you're in that situation, it's not really a decision, you just kind of do it. Depending on, your own situation, your own family life and all of that kind of stuff, of course. So in the middle of 2020, I had to figure out how to move countries. Not only did I have to work out how to travel, because even just getting a flight was really difficult at that time, especially into Australia, because what Australia had basically done was close their borders. So that was like a massive thing to have to do. And I was really lucky. I say lucky, I also must admit to doing a lot of manifestation and prayer work. And refreshing websites as well was part of the magical process there. And I got a flight pretty quickly. I think it was like 2 weeks, and I had managed to get on a flight. However, there was a lot of anxiety around it all, because at that time flights were just getting cancelled like left, right and centre. And so many people, I joined all of these groups on Facebook, people trying to get home. How do I get home? I'm trapped in this country. How do I get out? And yeah, lots of people had stories about their flights being cancelled. And I was like, okay, really, this flight needs to not be cancelled. And then, of course, there's stories too, because I had to fly into Singapore and then from Singapore to Melbourne, to Sydney, because I landed in Sydney. And then you heard all these other stories about, well, you can get halfway, but there's no guarantee that you're gonna, you're not gonna get stuck somewhere in the middle of not the country you want to be in. So anyway, that was like a massive, massive, massive thing that I had to navigate, and I managed to come back to Australia. My husband had to stay in the UK, and he had to pack up the entire house. He had to try and get a flight himself. Not only that, he had to try to get a visa so that he could come over here. It was just quite difficult. So I didn't see my husband for 6 months, and moved back in with my mum for a little while, and it was pretty crazy times. Like, it was just really kind of like, life kind of just seems pretty normal, and you're just like, okay, just another day, and then something happens that just kind of like, suddenly you're living on the other side of the planet. So that was kind of, part of what was happening for me in 2021. And around that time, I decided that the most important thing for me to do was to support my mum, but also to look after my own mental health as much as I could. So I put a pause on a lot of the things that I had been doing up to that point. Some of those things were my YouTube channel, which has just been like, YouTube has been one of those things for me that I have just had such an it's complicated relationship with over time. I've constantly left YouTube and then come back and been like, I'm back on YouTube and I'm doing these videos, and then I made 2 or 3 videos and then just disappeared again. I really don't want to do that this time. I really feel like I'm at a place now where I'm ready to be consistent again. But, life happens, right? Life happens. So my intention is to be on YouTube. My intention is to be creating these podcasts. My intention is to kind of feel like I'm coming back into the world after having this, this time off. So, 2021 for me was really about looking after people in my family, looking after myself, and just kind of dealing with and processing all of the stuff that had been coming up. You know, we had other things happen too, like when my husband finally came over to Australia, we were really struggling to find somewhere to live. So like just that was like a whole thing, and it was basically this whole year of just like, you know, things were quite challenging. I would say. And then, you know, last year, 2022, I really wanted to kind of get back into work, but I knew I had to find a way to do it that would still allow me to do all of the other things I need to be present for in my life. So last year for me was very much about writing, and I have this great story that at the time was like really full on and stressful, but now it's like this great story of how I navigated this. So like in the middle of 2022, I got 3 contracts all at the same time for 2 books and a deck. And all of these things needed to be finished. They all had a deadline at the end of the year. So I had 6 months to write 2 books and create a deck. Now, the deck creation process, I used to look at decks and be like, whatever, that would take me like an hour and I could create a deck, you know? Like, it's actually not that easy. At least for me, it wasn't. It's beautiful. There was ease in the process, but it wasn't as simple as just sitting down and just banging out a guidebook. Although I know some people can do it like that, and that's great. But for me, it wasn't just that simple. I did a lot of work with Ellie. Our process was that I would kind of tune in to the energy of the cards, and then I would create these sort of like vision boards, art boards for her using images that I found online on Pinterest and like a bunch of other places. And I'd send her like these boards for each of the cards, which was really fun. Like, that was such a fun process, but it did take time. It did take time. And then I had to write the guidebook, which also did take time. And then, you know, writing a book also takes time. So I had this like 6-month period to essentially write 2 books and a deck. And it was pretty cool in a lot of ways to have that as a problem, I suppose. You know, what's your biggest problem right now, Vix? Well, it's that I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed with how many books and decks I have to create and write. So yeah, it was a really interesting time. I basically just kind of chained myself to my laptop, and I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna write. And I did a lot of Kundalini yoga. I did a lot of, in hindsight, I wish I'd done more. But yeah, I did a lot of like calling on guides and support in other realms to help me with that, to help me channel. Like, you know, can I just channel this? Can I just open up and just channel it? I don't tend to really write that way so much as I know some authors can sit down and they just open up and they just comes through. You know, they don't even have to. One of my favorite authors is Joshua David Stone, and he says in one of his books, he said that he basically just channels it, and that they hardly even need to edit anything. It's just like, it's just written and there it is. I was like, that's amazing, you know, like, good for him that he was able to do that. That's fantastic. But for me, the process is part channeling, part my own experiences, you know, that I want to share. But yeah, for me, it feels like it's part channel, but there's definitely a lot of me, like my writing. Like, it's not just, hey, I'm opening up to the divine spirit and this is just totally purely channeled from the divine. But then I don't know, you can kind of think about that in terms of, well, when I say it's me, what is me? Am I just a channel for universal consciousness anyway? I don't know. That should really probably be a whole different conversation. But yeah, so that was kind of my big focus for last year, 2022. You may be listening to this at some point in the future, and last year may not be 2022. So then, here we are in 2023. This is recording this in May 2023. Again, I'm not sure when I'm going to release this. My plan is actually to create a few videos first, and then I'll start releasing them. And that's a good way to do it, I think. And a lot of podcasters do that. I know some podcasters have like 6 months of content before it comes out, which feels a little bit probably not what I will do, but I would like to have a few pieces of content in the bank before I start to release these videos and podcast episodes. So that kind of brings us up to date. With where I've been over the last couple of years. There's a lot of things that I haven't shared in this story. It's very hard to fit, 4 years into 30 minutes. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting ride for me, and I've thought it many times over the last few years. Do I even want to keep doing spiritual stuff? Do I even want to keep doing New Age Hipster? But it just doesn't let me go. It doesn't let go. And all the nudges I've had this year to have really been to kind of get back out there with New Age Hipster stuff, with kind of getting back to the roots of what New Age Hipster really is and what it really began as. And for those of you who don't know, I'll share you a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit about what New Age Hipster is, because I've now got this weird kind of situation where I'm Victoria Maxwell, the author, and I also have New Age Hipster, which is my business. A lot of people tell you when you start a business, don't call it a name that's like really, don't call it a name that's like really random. Like just use your name, like call yourself Victoria Maxwell author, or Jane blogs medium, or whatever your thing is, like but I didn't listen to that, and I at the beginning it's like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what New Age Hipster was going to be. I didn't know that it was going to ever be a thing, really more than just me sharing in a blog, which is what New Age Hipster started as, just a blog. It was just me sharing some of my thoughts on my own personal spiritual journey. That's how it started. And you can actually go back to the beginning of my blog and you'll be amazed like what I used to blog about. I remember this really amazing blog, and if you type into the Google New Age Hipster, what was the crystal? It was a crystal. It was a blue crystal. I can't remember what it was now. I have to try and remember and share the link with you in the show notes for this. Aqua Aura Quartz, that's what it was. Aqua Aura Quartz. If you type in New Age Hipster Aqua Aura Quartz, you will find this most amazing blog post. I think it was the second blog post I ever wrote, and it was like, hi, I just wanted to write this post about this crystal that I found online, and I really like it. I think it's really pretty. And it was just like this post about me talking about how much I liked this crystal. I didn't even think I had a crystal at the time. I think I was just looking at them on Etsy and thinking like, I really want to buy one of these. It's amazing. I still have that crystal somewhere. Actually, I'm feeling like that's a reminder. I need to get that crystal out. Maybe give it a cleanse and bring it back into rotation. But that's it, that's how it started for me. That's how New Age Hipster started for me. Just these weird little blog posts where I just shared my thoughts on crystals, on the tarot. I'd brought my tarot deck back out after years and years of kind of not using it, sometimes using it, putting it away. And I was like, oh, I'm going to actually really learn how to do this. And I did really learn how to do it, obviously, because here we are. But, you know, at the beginning, it was very much like, here's a blog post about how I think that the Queen of Cups is Bridget Jones. I just write a blog post about it. So that's how it started. And I also started my social media around then. I was getting really into Instagram. This is over 10 years ago. So for those of you who were not on Instagram over 10 years ago, it was like a completely different thing back then. It was so easy to get views. Like I just used to post these little like card of the day readings. They were terrible photos, like really terrible photos. And I just pick a card, write a little bit about what I thought it meant, and you get like 30 likes. And I had like, only had like 10 followers. So it was like, wow, this is amazing. It's changed so much over the years. I'm starting to sound like what's the name that they've given us now? It's geriatric millennial, I believe, is how they refer to us. So yeah, I've been at this game for a while, but yeah, so that's how it started, and then there was kind of this inciting incident where I was trying to figure out what to do. I wasn't really happy in my teaching job. I used to be a teacher. At that time, I was teaching in an autism specialist unit. That was kind of my main thing for quite a few years. I was an autism specialist teacher. I also worked as a drama and English teacher for quite a long time as well. That's kind of my background. So yeah, I'd kind of... I come to this place, I guess, in my career where I was like, what am I even doing? Like, do I even want to teach? Do I need to just get a new job? Sometimes it's like, well, is it that I hate my career, or am I just tired? Do I just need to change the sceneries? So anyway, I got this reading off Etsy. I bought a reading off Etsy for like $20, and the woman's name was, I don't really want to tell you her real name, but it was one of those very kind of like Southern American names, like 6 names, Lucy Ann, Llewellyn, Joe or something. And I just thought she sounded amazing. I was just like, this is the woman I want to pull my cards. Like, she's it for me. So I got her to do this reading for me, and she said I was going to get this new job that I'd applied for and everything was going to work out. I was like, okay, cool. She had also, like, the way that she did her email reading was really interesting, because she basically like cut and pasted. It was almost like she'd Googled the cards and cut and pasted the definitions off the internet or something. And she did put in like some of her own thoughts around it, but it was pretty strange, and it definitely didn't feel like, she's really tuned in for me. This is really great. And I didn't get the job that she said I was going to get. And I was kind of just left thinking, what was that all about? Like, what was the point of all that? And I told one of my friends, I told my friend Hope, who has actually sadly passed away recently. I told her about this reading that I got, and she kind of laughed, and she was like, why are you getting someone else to do a reading for you? Like, read your own cards, like, you're really good. And I didn't really think I was really good at that time, because I'd only kind of read for myself and friends, and was often going to the guidebook, and it's still very much learning. But she really encouraged me to try reading for people, because I was like, I can do a better job than that, like I can do a better reading than that, like, surely. So then I went on my mission to do 100 free readings. I heard about this in one of Dusty White's books. He suggested, or was it on his podcast? I used to listen to his podcast. Anyway, somewhere he suggested that if you wanted to be a professional tarot reader, what you needed to do was 100 free readings. And they're not really free, because they're in exchange for feedback. So, try not to think about them as being, oh, I'm doing all of this work for free. you kind of think about it as this is my like apprenticeship and I'm doing these readings in exchange for feedback. So I did that. I did 100 free readings, and most people gave feedback. Well, most people, probably like 60% of people gave feedback. A lot of people you never hear from again, but that's often the way, especially when you go onto Facebook groups and you're like, hey, who wants a free reading? There's a lot of people that, you know, they want a free reading, but they don't really want to help you or support you in your business in any way. But a lot of people did, and that was amazing. And I got so much really positive feedback, and I was like, wow, maybe I can do this. You know, maybe this is something I can do. So then I started doing readings on Etsy. I was like, I'm going to do readings on Etsy. So I started selling readings on Etsy. A lot of the people who were, you know, these 100 clients that I first had, these free clients that I first had, a lot of them turned into paying clients, which was really great. Word started to spread. I started getting really busy. And then I kind of moved from there into starting to teach some spiritual development stuff online as well. So that's like the really short, that probably wasn't that short, but that's the condensed version of, you know, how I got into this work. So then I kind of just kept going with it. You know, I kept teaching classes. Then I started my membership, The Circle, where we did a different spiritual development topic every month. And you can still buy all of the content from that. It's all still over on my website. We did that for 4 years. So for 4 years, every month I'd create a new content for people, which was really fun. But once I'd gotten to, it was actually over 4 years, I think, once I kind of gotten to that point, plus with moving over back to Australia and all this other stuff that was going on, I was like, okay, I think I need a little bit of a break from The Circle. I still have people messaging me saying, I miss The Circle. Can you please bring it back? Please bring back The Circle. I'm not sure if it's going to come back, but some of the other things that I'm doing at the moment, which I nearly forgot to share with you, like if you want to connect, and work together, these are some of the ways that you can work with me. You can obviously buy my books and my decks on wherever you buy your books and your decks. And that's a great way for us to connect. And it's also a very affordable way to connect. You can take one of my workshops. So the workshops I'm offering at the moment, and I'm getting like lots of different nudges to do lots of different things at the moment with workshops. But one of the things I'm doing at the moment is called Kundalini Magic. And I'm really, really excited about these workshops. And there's something a little bit different. So no one's doing this, as far as I know, except for me, which there's pros and cons to, right? Because you're like, I'm the only person teaching these types of classes. But then it also means that people are like, what is this? So essentially what it is it's me sharing Kundalini yoga practices, but it's not a physical class. So I am actually getting the nudge to teach some physical classes as well. So that's coming. So stay tuned for that. But these Kundalini Magic workshops are really just taking some of the practices, the meditations, the mudras, the mantras, and sharing them with you in a way where, you know, you can be sitting on the floor, you can be sitting in a chair, you can be in bed, like, you know, whatever's going to work for you. I really wanted this to be inclusive, because I feel like a lot of what happens in the Kundalini with Kundalini yoga is that people think it's really physical, so they don't think they can do it, whether it's because they have an injury, or maybe you have a disability, or maybe there's some other reason that you're unfit, you're whatever. And so you think, okay, there's no way I can do Kundalini yoga because it's all like bendy and blah, 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 and whatever. First of all, I just want to say that that's not necessarily true. It may be true for you and in your body, but it also may not be true, because I am not a bendy person. Like I did dance growing up, but even when I was young and I was doing a lot of dance, I was never like a bendy dancer. Like I was always probably one of the least flexible in the dance troupe, right? Like we're doing high kicks and I'm doing high kicks with like my back leg is like so bent and so close to the floor just to like get the appearance of a high kick, found all of these tricks of like how to make it look like I'm doing it, and like everyone's doing the splits and I got my back leg like way bent, but it kind of looks like I'm doing splits a little bit if no one looks too closely. So then I had this period in my life where I didn't really do any much exercise at all for like 10 years, and only kind of came back to it pretty recent, within like the last 10 years. I kind of, in my 30s, I wasn't doing that much physical activity like at all, really. I was running after kids a lot in my teaching job. But, Kundalini yoga for me, there's a lot of stuff I can't do. There's a lot of stuff that, in the instructions, it's like, okay, get into this pose and stay here for like 20 minutes. I'm like, my body won't let me do that. So I am all about modification. Like, modification is just the best thing. So if you do come to one of my physical classes and you're like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this, come and I will give you modifications. I have like a few different things happening in my body right now that also means that I can't do specific physical things as well. And I'm like struggling with those, but I'm also thinking, this is a great opportunity for me to think about how would I modify this? So anyway, modifications are there. There's another cool thing about Kundalini yoga, where if you need to take a break, say you got your arms up in the air and you're like, I can't do this. If you need to take a break, what you can do is you can put your arms down and you visualize that you're holding your arms in the air. It's like, this is amazing. You just visualize that your arms are in the air, and it's like you get the same benefit, or you get a similar benefit. Maybe not exactly the same, but it's definitely a benefit. But these Kundalini magic workshops, what I've done is I've taken practices that are not physical, because there's a lot of practices in the path, in the tradition, that are not that physical. There are practices where you're just moving your fingers, or you're just chanting, or you're just, you have your hands at the heart center, and there's like a specific thing that you're invited to think about or focus on, or you focus at your third eye and you're just kind of listening to a mantra or something like that. So I wanted to share these practices, or like breath work, some breath work as well that we've been doing in those classes. But it's really simple. Like, it's really simple stuff, but it's really, really powerful, because these practices come from ancient, it's an ancient lineage, these yogic practices. It is just amazing. Like, it's just amazing, and there's no real way to describe it to you unless you just do it. You just have to do it for yourself and see if it works for you. But so anyway, these classes they're supposed to be easy, and kind of like a fun way into the practices. Maybe you'll come to Kundalini Magic and you'll be like, wow, I love this energy, I love this mantra, this just made me feel really good. And then maybe you want to start to explore the physical practices if it's available to you. If it's not, I wanted to have a place to share these practices with people who maybe the physical practices aren't available to you. Anyway, I've rambled on about that a lot. I'd love to do some more podcast episodes talking more specifically about Kundalini yoga, and maybe even get some of my teachers on the podcast. I haven't reached out to them yet, so they don't know that I'm going to reach out, but hopefully they will come and join us and talk more about these practices, because I've just felt them in my own life. Like, they have just helped me in huge ways. So I want to share them with you, and I feel like that's one of my roles in this lifetime, is to be a wisdom keeper but also wisdom teacher. So to essentially find these practices, go on my own journey of like, hey, I'm experiencing all of these things, they're really working for me, and then bring them and share them with everybody else. And I think that's what we all need to be doing right now. So that is one of the things that I'm doing. The other exciting thing that I'm doing is I have brought back readings, and I haven't been officially doing readings for a while, probably since the last couple of years. But I felt really called to open up and offer readings again. There's some information on my website on how you can get a reading with me. I am not going to be opening up readings like everybody can get a reading. What I'm going to be doing is just opening up a certain number of slots each time, like probably once a month. And then once those slots are full, you'll need to wait, and then I'll kind of open up new slots again. There is a list that you can join if you want to know when the readings open up. I opened up readings yesterday. All of the full readings were gone. Like, I opened them up in the afternoon and the next morning they were all gone. So the best way to get a reading with me is to sign up to this list, which is on my website. It's on the Work With Me page. I'll put the link in the show notes for you, but you can just go to New Age Hipster and and then click on Work With Me and you'll find it there. So if you get on this list, that list is the list that I will send to first when reading slots are open. And then if there are still reading slots available, I'm then going to share it to my newsletter subscribers. And then if there are still slots available, then I'm going to share on social media and kind of, everywhere else, my group on Facebook, Spiritual Journey Pit Stop, and in other places. So that's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to doing readings again, doing one-on-one readings. I have actually been secretly doing readings this whole time, but not kind of officially. I've just been reading for previous clients, and people who kind of reached out to me with a request for me to work with them. But now I'm open to all, which feels really, really fun and really exciting. I also have some other offerings coming soon. I am going to open up again for business mentoring, and I wasn't going to tell you this, but I will, author mentoring. I feel like I am at a place where I have had quite a bit of experience now with the author journey. I've self-published 3 books. I have 2 books out, 2 decks out. I have a book and another deck coming out. So yeah, that's going to be something that I'll be announcing maybe next month. Maybe when this podcast is out, that will be something that's already over on my website. If it's not, it will be coming soon. So, okay, that's it. That's me. That's what I've been up to. That is, yeah, that's what I've been up to. That's me. That's what's happening. I would love, love, love to hear from you. I would love to know from you. Are you excited that the podcast is back? Who do you want me to get on the podcast? Who do you want me to invite on the podcast? What do you want me to talk about on the podcast? I think I'm going to do what I did last time, where I kind of did these like solo episodes and then did a chat. So it'd be like solo chat. And then you can, if you're not really into just listening to me ramble this was supposed to be 45 minutes. Then you can skip those and you can just listen to the conversations. If you don't want to listen to the conversations, if you're like, I don't want to hear Vix talking to randoms, I just want to hear Vix's rambles, then you can do that too. There's like options for, whatever you're here for. So, wow, okay. That feels weird to be back doing this. It feels really weird, but it feels really good. I feel really excited about being back. I feel excited about being back on YouTube. I feel excited about being back on the podcast. I feel like the time is right. I feel like I have I'm in the right place to be back. So it feels good. I hope you're excited about it too. And that's it from me. Please stay tuned. Do all of the things that you're supposed to. I can't even remember. I remember like last time I did this, you were supposed to say at the end, like, review this podcast and give me 5 stars or whatever it is that you're supposed to do. Obviously, I need to remember what I'm doing a little bit with the podcast, because it has been a long time since I've done this. So I need to go and remember how to upload these and remind you to like, subscribe, thumbs up. I don't know. I actually found it was really cool when I was Googling my podcast from last time, because I was trying to remember how many episodes I did, and I found it on Apple and there were reviews on there that I'd never seen. People had reviewed the podcast like 4 years ago, and I'd never even seen those reviews. And reading them now it was like the perfect moment, because it felt like, okay, yeah, people do want this podcast. This is really cool. Hopefully those people who posted like 4 years ago might still want to listen to this. Maybe they've moved in completely different directions. But if you're one of those people that left me a review on Apple Podcasts like 4 years ago, I would love you to get in touch, because I want to give you something just to say thank you, because like it was amazing. If you're still here, you're still listening after all this time, send me an email, get in touch. I want to give you something. Okay. All right, that's it. That's enough rambling. I love you all so much. It is such a blessing to be here in this space. It is such a blessing to serve and support you in this way. Hopefully this one was very like me focused, but I don't want this to be always me focused. I would love this to be about you, your questions, what you need, what you're interested in learning about, what you want to hear about, who you want me to talk to. I really want this to serve and support you. So let me know in the comments, send me an email, connect with me on socials, and yeah, can't wait to see you on the next one. Lots of love.